The rain drummed against the tent covering my father's casket. Each drop echoed the hollowness spreading through my chest. As mourners dispersed, leaving me alone with my grief, I noticed him approaching Elliot, the CEO's son, impeccably dressed despite the downpour. He adjusted his gold cufflinks, eyes scanning the empty chairs before landing on me. "Adira," he said, voice soft but edges sharp. "Just wanted to say personally, take all the time you need for your healing process." His pause was deliberate. "The team can manage without you. We don't actually need you back." The words penetrated deeper than my grief. 20 years my father had given to that company. 2 years I devoted myself to our shared vision. "The project I started is being handled?" Elliot cut in, a smile forming. "Your father's notes were adequate. I've taken personal control of the manufacturing client. Don't worry your pretty head." He placed his hand on my shoulder, leaning close. "Between us, your position was always a courtesy to your father. Now that he's gone." He straightened his tie. "Well, priorities shift." As he walked away, droplets sliding off his expensive coat, something hardened inside me. Through tears, I watched him slide into his luxury car, already on his phone, laughing. I placed my hand on Dad's casket. "I promise," I whispered. "They'll learn exactly how much they need me." Before I share how I dismantled an entire company's leadership with nothing but my father's teachings and pure determination, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next proves that sometimes, revenge isn't just sweet, it's necessary. My name is Adira Levente, and until 2 months ago, I was the youngest systems architect at Bluecrest Engineering Consultancy. My father, Leo Levente, had been their genius problem solver for 2 decades, the quiet mastermind who turned failing industrial systems into profit machines. I'd grown up watching him sketch designs at our kitchen table, falling asleep to his gentle explanations of fluid dynamics and optimization algorithms. When I graduated with dual masters in systems engineering and sustainable design, joining him at Bluecrest felt inevitable. What wasn't inevitable was how quickly I'd become orphaned and unemployed. Dad and I had been working on something revolutionary, a complete efficiency overhaul for Meridian Manufacturing, Bluecrest's biggest client. Our process would cut their energy consumption by 40% while increasing output by 25%. Dad handled client relations while I perfected the technical aspects. We kept the full methodology between us, planning to unveil it together. Then came the aneurysm. Sudden, unstoppable. Dad was gone before I could say goodbye. At the funeral, most of Bluecrest attended. Conrad Hale, the CEO, embraced me with what seemed like genuine sadness. "Your father was irreplaceable," he'd said, "but your family now." Only his son Elliot didn't bother with pretense. The rain-soaked confrontation by my father's casket revealed his true intentions. He'd been waiting for this opportunity. I took 1 week off, just 7 days to bury my father and process my grief. When I returned to the office, my keycard access had been downgraded. My project files had been moved. My desk had been relocated to a corner workstation near the supply closet. "Temporary adjustments," the office manager explained nervously. "Direct orders from Operations Director Elliot." I stared at my new desk, devoid of the research materials I'd spent months compiling. My throat tightened, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I'd barely settled when my computer pinged with a calendar invite. Project reassignment meeting, 11 a.m. In the glass-walled conference room, Elliot sat at the head of the table, though his father technically outranked him. Conrad looked uncomfortable but remained silent as Elliot outlined the new direction. "In light of recent personnel changes," Elliot said, not even looking at me, "we've restructured project assignments. Adira, you'll be handling documentation and support for the Northeast regional clients." Documentation, support, busy work that any junior engineer could handle. "The Meridian project?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I'll be taking the lead," Elliot replied. "Your father left extensive notes, and I've been studying the industry for years. The client needs stability and seniority now." Stability and seniority, from someone who'd never once set foot on a manufacturing floor. "With respect," I said carefully, "that system design isn't complete. Dad and I were developing a proprietary approach which is documented in the company files, Elliot interrupted. It's intellectual property of Bluecrest, not the Levente family. Conrad cleared his throat. Adira, we value your contributions, but Elliot makes a valid point. Meridian represents 40% of our annual revenue. We can't risk any hiccups. I understood then. Conrad might have respected my father, but he feared losing his biggest client more. Elliot had convinced him I was a risk, not an asset. For the next 3 weeks, I complied. I documented minor projects. I supported junior engineers. I watched from the periphery as Elliot paraded around the office, boasting about his breakthrough approach for Meridian. During weekly status meetings, I sat silently while Elliot presented fragments of my father's work as his own. He stumbled over technical details, inventing explanations that made no engineering sense. Nobody questioned him, after all. He was the CEO's son and operations director. What Elliot didn't know was that my father and I had designed the system with deliberate interdependencies. Without understanding the core algorithm, which wasn't in any of the notes, the entire system would fail catastrophically under real-world conditions. The deadline approached for Meridian's final presentation. They required proof of concept before signing the 8-figure contract renewal. With unearned confidence, Elliot promised to deliver a complete implementation plan within 2 weeks. I stayed late every night, ostensibly catching up on my assigned documentation. In reality, I was tracking Elliot's progress through the shared project management system. He was building a house of cards using only half the blueprint. On a rainy Tuesday evening, exactly 1 month after my father's funeral, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Adira Levente?" a woman's voice asked. "Speaking. This is Talia Reeves, chief engineer at Meridian Manufacturing. Your father and I worked closely for years." My heart stuttered. "Yes, I remember. He spoke highly of you." "Something feels off about the proposal we're getting from Bluecrest," she said bluntly. "The approach being presented doesn't align with what your father described to me. He always mentioned your brilliance and how you two were revolutionizing the entire methodology." I gripped the phone tighter. "Did you speak with Elliot about your concerns?" "I tried. He dismissed them as technical details to be addressed later. Our CEO is getting nervous. We're making a massive investment here." A pause stretched between us. "Would you be willing to review our requirements directly?" she finally asked. "Off the record, of course." I closed my eyes, calculating risks and possibilities. "Send them over. I'll need access to your current system schematics as well." For the next 3 days, I barely slept. At my small apartment kitchen table, the same one where my father had taught me everything I knew, I built a complete implementation plan from scratch. I incorporated all the innovations my father and I had developed, plus refinements I'd been working on since his death. My proposal would save Meridian nearly 15% more than what Bluecrest had originally promised. I highlighted critical flaws in Elliot's approach, showing precisely where and how it would fail under operational conditions. On the 4th day, I sent the completed proposal to Talia with a simple message. "This is what my father and I envisioned. Use it however you see fit." She replied within hours, "Can you be at our headquarters Friday morning? Our CEO wants to meet you." I called in sick to Bluecrest on Friday. Instead of resting at home, I put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to my job interview with my father beaming proudly beside me, and headed to Meridian's headquarters. Talia met me in the lobby. "They're all upstairs," she said, "including the Bluecrest team." My stomach tightened. "They don't know I'm here." "No," she confirmed. "Our CEO, Naomi, wanted to see how their presentation played out first. You'll sit in the back. Don't say anything until we signal you." The boardroom was massive, with Meridian executives lining one side and the Bluecrest team, Conrad, Elliot, and 2 senior engineers, on the other. I slipped into a chair in the corner as Elliot stood to begin his presentation. He looked every inch the successful executive in his tailored suit, hair perfectly styled, expression confident. For nearly 40 minutes, he outlined what he called our innovative approach, fragments of my father's work cobbled together with standard industry practices. When the technical questions began, his facade cracked. He fumbled explanations, contradicted earlier statements, and grew increasingly defensive. This cooling subsystem, Meridian's production director pointed out, seems insufficient for your projected throughput. That's a minor calibration issue, Elliot stammered. We'll adjust during implementation. And these efficiency projections, another executive noted, they don't align with the energy inputs you've outlined. Conrad jumped in to help his son. We assure you, all calculations have been triple verified by our team. That's when Naomi Lin, Meridian's CEO, raised her hand, silencing the room. She was a small woman with commanding presence, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a precise bun. We've reviewed an alternative proposal, she announced, nodding to her assistant who began distributing copies to everyone in the room. My proposal. This addresses our actual needs and delivers significantly greater efficiency gains. The room fell silent as everyone flipped through the detailed document. Conrad's face drained of color as he recognized aspects of the design that went far beyond what they had prepared. We've decided to work directly with the author, Naomi continued, turning toward the back of the room. Ms. Levente, would you care to join us at the table? Every head swiveled toward me as I rose from my corner seat. Elliot's expression transformed from confusion to rage as I walked to the front of the room. This is highly inappropriate, Conrad sputtered. Adira is our employee. Any work she's done belongs to Bluecrest. Actually, Naomi replied coolly, Ms. Levente developed this on her own time, using our proprietary data that we shared directly with her, at our request. But ownership isn't the issue here. She smiled thinly. We're also acquiring controlling interest in your consultancy to ensure proper implementation. Conrad paled further. Acquiring? That's impossible. We're not for sale. Your minority shareholders disagree, Naomi replied. We've already secured their support. They're quite concerned about the company's direction since Leo Levente's passing. The truth dawned on Conrad's face. Those minority shareholders were retired engineers who had worked alongside my father for years, people who had watched Elliot's rapid rise with growing concern. This is corporate theft, Elliot hissed, glaring at me. You can't just… It's business, Naomi cut him off. Your business, which has consistently delivered excellence until recently. We aim to restore that excellence. She turned to me. Adira will lead the implementation as Meridian's representative. The meeting ended abruptly after that. As everyone filed out, Elliot blocked my path, his face contorted with anger. You planned this all along, he accused. You manipulated. Take all the time you need to process this, I interrupted softly, echoing his words from my father's funeral. After all, we don't actually need you anyway. The acquisition process took exactly 2 weeks. Meridian maintained most of Bluecrest's staff but restructured the leadership entirely. Conrad retired with a generous package, conditional on his son remaining with the company in some capacity. My first official act as the newly appointed managing director was reassigning Elliot to our remote testing facility in the desert. His official title, Legacy Systems Analyst. His job, documenting the slow decline of outdated machinery that, like him, once seemed important but proved unnecessary. He keeps his generous salary but spends his days in isolation, watching dials on equipment we'll never use again. Each month, he receives the same company-wide email showing our growing success with the implementation of my father's final vision, a legacy he tried to steal but now watches flourish from the sidelines. Last week, I visited the desert facility for a routine inspection. Elliot's office was sparse and dusty, his once immaculate appearance now careless. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. Come to gloat? He asked. I shook my head. Just ensuring company resources are being properly utilized. He laughed bitterly. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate me? To destroy everything my family built? Your family didn't build anything, I replied calmly. People like my father did. People whose contributions you dismissed. This isn't about humiliation, Elliot. It's about consequences. I placed a small framed photo on his desk. It showed my father standing proudly beside a younger me at my graduation. Keep this, I said. A reminder that every system has its breaking point when the wrong pressure is applied. As I turned to leave, he called after me. "You can't keep me here forever." I paused at the doorway. "I don't need to. Eventually, like these machines you're monitoring, you'll become obsolete. The only difference is, they once served a purpose." The desert sun was blinding as I walked back to my car. In the distance, the testing facility stood as a monument to outdated thinking, isolated, forgotten, yet still technically part of the company. Just like Elliot wanted for me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about reconstruction, building something better from the ruins of what was taken from you. My father taught me that every system can be optimized, even justice. The company thrives now, our client list growing as word spreads about our revolutionary efficiency processes. Many nights, I still work at my kitchen table, refining ideas, pushing boundaries, honoring my father's legacy through innovation rather than remembrance. And sometimes, when I'm solving a particularly difficult problem, I swear I can feel him sitting across from me, pride shining in his eyes as I carry forward what he began. As for Elliot, he got exactly what he wished for. We truly don't need him anyway. If this story of corporate justice satisfied your need for sweet professional revenge, hit the like button and subscribe for more tales of underestimated people who turned the tables on those who wronged them. Share in the comments if you've ever been dismissed at work only to prove your true value later. Remember, sometimes the person they don't think they need becomes the one they can't succeed without. 6 months have passed since that desert confrontation with Elliot. The company, now rebranded as Levante Innovation Systems, has transformed from a traditional engineering consultancy into a pioneer in sustainable industrial design. Our headquarters moved from Bluecrest's sterile glass tower to a renovated warehouse with living walls and skylights that flood the workspace with natural light. It's the kind of environment my father would have loved, practical yet inspiring, where ideas flow as freely as the open floor plan allows. Most mornings, I arrive before dawn. Not from obligation, but because the quiet hours remind me of childhood mornings when Dad would let me sit beside him at his drafting table, teaching me to see the hidden patterns in seemingly chaotic systems. "Engineering isn't just about machines, Adira," he'd say. "It's about understanding the spaces between components, how things connect, how energy flows." Those words guide me now, as I rebuild what Elliot nearly destroyed. When Meridian acquired controlling interest, they gave me considerable latitude to restructure. The first decision was surprisingly difficult: what to do with the remaining Hale influence. Conrad had taken his retirement package and disappeared to a coastal property, but Elliot remained a complicated problem. Legally, we couldn't terminate him without substantial cause, a protection his father had cleverly written into the company bylaws. The desert reassignment was the compromise that satisfied both Meridian's leadership and my own sense of justice. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly Elliot's exile would become industry gossip. Former clients called, curious about the leadership change. Competitors reached out with partnership offers, sensing opportunity in the transition. Every conversation eventually circled to the same question: what happened to the Hales? I developed a standard response. Conrad retired to pursue personal interests. Elliot remains with the company in an analytical capacity. The truth was more complex. Elliot's monthly reports from the desert facility arrived with clockwork regularity, detailed, thorough, and completely useless. He documented the degradation rates of obsolete machinery with the precision of someone who recognized he was performing the same analysis on his own career trajectory. 3 months into his assignment, he requested a transfer back to headquarters. "On what basis?" I asked during our video call, his face grainy against the stark white walls of his remote office. "I've completed a comprehensive analysis of the legacy systems," he replied, dark circles under his eyes. "There's nothing more to learn here." "Then perhaps you'll finally appreciate the feeling of having your expertise dismissed," I said. "Request denied." His facade cracked. "This is personal vendetta, not business." "No, Elliot. This is accountability. The desert facility needs supervision, and you're uniquely qualified for insignificant oversight." After ending the call, I sat in my office, my father's former office, feeling hollow despite having delivered what should have been a satisfying rebuke. Revenge was supposed to feel better than this, wasn't it? That evening, Talia Reeves from Meridian stopped by unannounced. We'd developed a solid working relationship during the acquisition, her practical engineering mind complementing my theoretical approach. "You look troubled," she observed, settling into a chair across from my desk. "Just tired," I deflected. "Liar," she smiled. "I knew your father for 15 years. He had the same expression when wrestling with an ethical problem rather than a technical one." I sighed. "It's Elliot." "The Desert Prince? What's he done now?" "Nothing. That's almost the problem." I explained our conversation and my lingering discomfort. Talia listened without interruption, then asked, "What would Leo do?" The question stopped me short. My father, for all his genius, had never been vindictive. He solved problems. He didn't create them. "He wouldn't have sent Elliot to the desert in the first place," I admitted. "Probably not," Talia agreed. "But Elliot isn't you, and he's certainly not Leo. Some people only learn when consequences affect them directly." "And some never learn at all," I said. "True, but that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to the company, the clients, and your father's legacy. Does keeping Elliot in exile serve those priorities?" I didn't have an immediate answer, which was answer enough. The next day, I called our head of product development, Preena Anand, a brilliant engineer who'd worked alongside my father for a decade. She had declined Elliot's offers of promotion multiple times during his brief leadership, preferring to remain focused on technical challenges rather than politics. "I need your honest assessment," I told her. "Is there any role here where Elliot could contribute without causing damage?" Preena considered the question carefully. "He's not without skills. His business degree and connections were useful for client acquisition. He just shouldn't be anywhere near actual engineering decisions or personnel management." "So client liaison, perhaps?" "With strict limitations and oversight," she cautioned, "and nowhere near Meridian or our other major accounts." I spent the weekend redesigning our organizational structure, creating a narrowly defined role that would utilize Elliot's business background while minimizing his potential for disruption. The position, Director of Legacy Client Relations, would focus on maintaining relationships with smaller, established clients whose projects required minimal innovation. On Monday morning, I called the desert facility. "Pack your things," I told a surprised Elliot. "You're being reassigned to headquarters, effective next week." His suspicion was immediate. Why the sudden change of heart? Not a change of heart, a strategic realignment of resources. When he returned, the change in him was striking. The desert sun had weathered his once smooth face, and his designer clothes hung loosely on his frame. The smirk that had once seemed permanently affixed was gone, replaced by cautious watchfulness. His new office was small but functional, positioned far from both the engineering department and executive row. His first day back, I called him in to establish ground rules. "Your responsibilities are clearly outlined in this document," I said, sliding a folder across my desk. "You'll handle relationship maintenance for the clients listed in Appendix A. You will not make technical promises, modify existing agreements, or initiate contact with any client not on your assigned list." He flipped through the pages, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "This is busy work, glorified customer service." "This is opportunity," I corrected. "More than you offered me at my father's funeral." His eyes met mine, a flicker of something, perhaps recognition, passing through them. "I underestimated you." "A common mistake. One I won't make regarding you." I stood, indicating our meeting was concluding. "Quarterly performance reviews will determine any expansion of your responsibilities. Until then, these boundaries are non-negotiable." As he turned to leave, I added, "Elliot, the company name has changed to Levente Innovation Systems. Please ensure all your communications reflect that." The symmetry wasn't lost on him. His family name erased from the company, just as he'd tried to erase my family's contributions. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. Elliot excelled within his limited role. The clients on his list reported positive interactions. His reports were thorough and timely. He arrived early, left late, and kept to himself. Prina noticed it first. He's actually trying, she remarked during our weekly leadership meeting. His client satisfaction metrics are impressive. People can surprise you, offered Damon Webb, our new head of operations. Sometimes hitting bottom is the only way to look up. I remained skeptical but couldn't deny the data. When Elliot's quarterly review arrived, his performance metrics justified a measured expansion of his responsibilities. I added 3 mid-sized clients to his portfolio and authorized him to participate in non-technical proposal developments. The day I informed him of these changes, he seemed genuinely shocked. "You're serious?" he asked, scanning the updated client list. "Your performance earned this," I said simply. "Continue on this trajectory, and further opportunities may follow." He studied me with newfound intensity. Why give me any chance at all? After what I did? The question deserved honesty. Because keeping you in the desert was about my pain, not company benefit. My father built this business on recognizing potential, not punishing mistakes. Even malicious ones? Especially those, I replied. He believed people capable of calculated harm were equally capable of calculated good, given proper motivation. Something shifted in Elliot's expression, not quite remorse, but perhaps the first recognition that actions had consequences beyond his intentions. As he left my office, I wondered if my father would approve of this approach. Redemption stories were his favorite. He collected them like other people collected art, seeing beauty in transformation. But he was also pragmatic. Trust, once broken, required more than good behavior to repair. I would watch Elliot carefully. Second chances didn't mean erased memories. As autumn approached, the company celebrated its first major milestone under the new structure, a patent for the efficiency system my father and I had developed. The entire staff gathered in the central atrium as Naomi from Meridian presented the framed patent certificate. "This innovation," she announced, "represents exactly why we invested in this company. It will transform industrial energy consumption across sectors while substantially increasing output." My name appeared first on the patent, followed by Leonardo Levente, posthumous. Seeing it displayed publicly brought unexpected tears. I accepted the frame, too emotional to speak beyond a simple thank you. Later, during the reception, I noticed Elliot standing alone by the windows, watching the celebration from a distance. Against my better judgment, I approached him. "You should be proud," he said before I could speak. "It's brilliant work." "Thank you," I replied, studying his expression for signs of insincerity but finding none. "He talked about you constantly, you know," Elliot continued, gaze fixed on the cityscape beyond the glass. "Your father, before you joined the company. Always my daughter the geniuses, this and Adira's revolutionary thinking that." He took a sip from his water glass. "I resented you before we ever met." The admission hung between us, unexpected and raw. "My father believed in my abilities," I said carefully, "but he also believed in this company, including the Hale leadership." Elliot laughed softly, "Until I proved him wrong." "People can surprise you," I echoed Damon's words, "sometimes positively." He turned to face me fully. "Is that what I'm doing? Surprising you positively?" "The jury's still deliberating," I replied, "but the evidence is trending in your favor." We stood in awkward silence until Prina called me away to meet a potential client. As I left, Elliot spoke again. "I never apologized," he said, "for what I said at the funeral. It was cruel and unnecessary." I paused, not turning back. "Yes, it was. I'm sorry, Adira." The words were simple but delivered without expectation or qualification. I nodded once in acknowledgement before rejoining the celebration, unsure what to make of this new development. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out my father's journal, a leather-bound book filled with his observations and insights. I'd been reading it gradually since his death, each entry like having a new conversation with him. The passage I turned to seemed eerily relevant. Engineering Principle 17. Resilience isn't about resisting change, but about incorporating it. The most durable systems are those that can transform external pressures into internal strengths. This applies to people as much as machines. I ran my fingers over his neat handwriting, wondering if he somehow knew I would need these words. Was my willingness to give Elliot a conditional second chance a sign of resilience or weakness? Was I transforming pressure into strength, or simply setting myself up for another betrayal? The company continued its upward trajectory through winter. We secured 3 major new clients, expanded our research division, and broke ground on a testing facility that would allow us to prototype large-scale implementations. Elliot maintained his solid performance, gradually earning limited trust among the staff. In January, an unexpected opportunity arose. A struggling manufacturing conglomerate, Westerly Industries, approached us about potential acquisition. They had fallen behind technologically but possessed valuable production capabilities and client relationships. If structured correctly, acquiring them would position Levante Innovation as an end-to-end solution provider. After initial analysis, I called a leadership meeting to discuss the possibility. To everyone's surprise, I included Elliot. "You've worked with several of their subsidiaries," I explained when questioned privately by Damon. "Your insight could be valuable." The meeting lasted hours, with detailed financial and operational assessments. Throughout the discussion, Elliot remained thoughtfully engaged, offering measured contributions without overstepping. When the conversation turned to acquisition strategy, he raised his hand, a gesture so uncharacteristically humble for the formerly arrogant executive that it momentarily silenced the room. "I have a suggestion," he said cautiously, "but it involves specialized knowledge I gained working with my father." All eyes turned to me. "Go ahead," I nodded. Westerly's ownership structure includes a complicated trust arrangement established by the founder. There's a specific approach to acquisition that would minimize tax implications while protecting their existing pension obligations. He outlined a sophisticated transaction structure that addressed several concerns we'd been debating. When he finished, Prina spoke first. "That's actually brilliant. It's similar to how we acquired Rollins Engineering 6 years ago," Elliot explained. "Few people remember that deal since it was relatively small, but the structure created a template." I studied him across the conference table. "Would you be willing to lead the financial structuring team for this acquisition? Working alongside Damon, of course." The offer clearly surprised him. "You'd trust me with that level of responsibility?" "Trust is earned incrementally," I replied. "Consider this an increment." Over the next month, Elliot worked tirelessly on the acquisition strategy. His knowledge of corporate finance proved genuinely valuable, and his approach remained collaborative rather than controlling. When complications arose, as they inevitably do in complex transactions, he navigated them with unexpected grace. The day we finalized the Westerly acquisition, the leadership team gathered in my office for a small celebration. Champagne was poured, congratulations exchanged. Elliot remained somewhat apart from the group until I deliberately brought him into the conversation. "This structure will save us millions in integration costs," I acknowledged. "Well done." He accepted the compliment with a nod. "It feels good to build something rather than—" He trailed off. "Rather than tear it down?" I finished for him. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "I've been reflecting on that a lot lately." After the others departed, Elliot lingered. "Can I speak with you privately?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course." He sat but seemed to struggle finding words, a rare occurrence for someone once so glib. "I've received a job offer," he finally said. "CTO position at a startup across the country. The founder is an old business school classmate." This was unexpected. "I see. When would they want you to start?" "Next month. But I wanted to discuss it with you first." "Why?" "You don't need my permission to pursue other opportunities." He leaned forward. "Because I don't know if I should take it. Part of me thinks I should stay and continue rebuilding what I damaged. Another part thinks you'll never fully trust me again. Nor should you. And a fresh start might be best for everyone." His candor was disarming. The Elliot who had whispered cruel words at my father's funeral would never have shown such self-awareness. "What do you want, Elliot?" I asked. "Not what you think you should do, or what others might want. What do you want?" He considered the question carefully. "I want to prove to myself more than anyone that I'm not the person who did those things, that I can create value without stepping on others." And do you need to leave to do that? I don't know, he admitted. What do you think? I thought about my father's journal, about resilience and transformation. I think running from your mistakes is easier than facing them daily. I also think people deserve the chance to redefine themselves. That doesn't answer my question. No, I agreed, because this isn't my decision to make. We sat in contemplative silence until Elliot finally stood. Thank you for not making this easy. I have some thinking to do. As he reached the door, I called after him. Elliot, whatever you decide, the work you did on this acquisition was genuinely valuable. That's yours to keep, regardless. 2 days later, Elliot declined the outside offer and requested a meeting with me and the leadership team. He presented a proposal for a new division focused on corporate restructuring and integration, leveraging the expertise he demonstrated during the Westerly acquisition. This could be a significant revenue stream, he explained. Many companies need transformation but lack the engineering and financial expertise to execute it properly. The team's response was cautiously positive. We approved a pilot program with Elliot as director, reporting directly to Damon with appropriate oversight mechanisms. As the meeting concluded, I felt a strange sense of completion. The company was thriving, expanding in directions my father would have approved. Elliot was channeling his ambition into constructive pursuits, and I had found a way to honor my father's legacy while creating my own path forward. That evening, I visited my father's grave for the first time since the funeral. The headstone was simple granite, engraved with his name, dates, and the phrase he'd often repeated, "Between every action and reaction lies opportunity." I placed fresh flowers beside it and sat on the small stone bench. I did it, Dad, I said softly. I protected what you built and made it stronger. But I did something else too. I paused, organizing my thoughts. I learned that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, building something so much better that the past becomes irrelevant. A gentle breeze rustled the trees overhead, and for a moment, I could almost hear his laughter, the way it would bubble up from deep in his chest when something delighted him. Elliot's still there, I continued. Not because I need him, but because pushing him away would have made me more like him than myself. You always said the true measure of a system is how it handles unexpected inputs. I think we're handling them pretty well. As twilight deepened around me, I felt a weight-lifting grief, transforming into something lighter, more sustainable. My father was gone, but his wisdom remained, embedded in the company that now bore our name and in the principles that guided my decisions. The rain that had poured during his funeral was now nourishing new growth. The cruel words spoken beside his casket had led to a complete transformation of the company he loved. And the daughter he believed in had proven herself more capable than even he might have imagined. Some might call it justice. Others, karma. I prefer to think of it as simply good engineering, identifying structural weaknesses, applying appropriate pressure, and rebuilding stronger than before. If there's one lesson in this story worth sharing, it's this. Never underestimate someone who learned resilience from a master. You might think you don't need them, only to discover they're the essential component your entire system required. Like, subscribe, and share if you've ever been underestimated only to prove your true value when it mattered most. And remember, sometimes the most powerful response to, "We don't need you," is becoming exactly what they can't succeed without. I stood frozen in the center of the cybersecurity team's glass-walled enclave, my tablet clutched against my chest like a shield. 6 faces stared back at me, expressions ranging from barely concealed amusement to open disdain. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Dimitri, the team lead, spun his chair back toward his triple-monitor setup. "Look, Paige," he said without turning around, his fingers already clacking away at his keyboard. "I appreciate your enthusiasm. But the customer portal is secure. We ran penetration testing last quarter, but the verification handshake is sending unencrypted." "Unencrypted? Troy?" Dimitri's second in command snorted. "You're using words you don't understand now." "I understand perfectly," I insisted, stepping forward. "During the two-factor authentication process, there's a 5-second window where where absolutely nothing happens that we haven't accounted for, Dimitri cut in, swiveling back to face me. His eyes traveled from my face down to my pink blouse and back up again. This is what happens when marketing hires people, because they took a Coursera class on digital basics. Laughter rippled through the room. Heat crawled up my neck as I stood my ground. I've documented the vulnerability. If someone with even basic packet sniffing tools wanted to... Packet sniffing? Seriously? Dimitri's eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. You're in marketing, Paige. Stick to your pretty graphics and leave the actual security to professionals. More laughter. Britt, the only woman on the security team, at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she said nothing. This could expose thousands of customer records, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. Names, addresses, account details, thousands of customers. Troy mimicked my tone, raising his voice to a feminine pitch that sounded nothing like me. The sky is falling. Dimitri pushed himself up from his chair and walked toward me, stopping close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. Listen carefully, he said quietly. Your job is to make things look pretty for the quarterly reports. My job is to keep this company secure. Stay in your lane and we won't have problems. I stood there, clutching my tablet with white knuckles, humiliation burning through me like acid. 6 years of network security experience before joining marketing, and I was being treated like a child who'd wandered into the wrong classroom. Without another word, I turned and walked away, their laughter following me through the door. I moved through the busy Monday morning office traffic, nodding mechanically at colleagues who greeted me, until I reached my desk in the marketing department. For 10 minutes, I stared at my screen, replaying the conversation. Then I opened my laptop and began typing furiously, creating a simple monitoring program. If the security team wouldn't listen, I'd need evidence. 48 hours later, my prediction came horrifyingly true. The customer service lines exploded with calls about unauthorized account access. The office descended into chaos as executives rushed between departments, demanding answers. Through my window, I watched the security team scrambling, their earlier smugness replaced by panic. The chief technology officer himself, Liam, appeared at my office doorway, tie askew and forehead gleaming with sweat. How did you know? He demanded, breathless. The vulnerability? It's exactly where you said. I looked up calmly and said, because I was doing their job while they were busy laughing at me. Hey, if you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your comments mean everything to me, so let me know what you think is going to happen next. Now, let's dive deeper into what happened after that moment. My name is Paige Woodley, and until 6 months ago, I hunted network security vulnerabilities for Atlantic Financial Trust. I didn't just understand cybersecurity, I lived it, breathed it, and excelled at it. My specialty was finding the gaps others missed, the tiny windows of vulnerability that appeared during seemingly secure processes. Then came the panic attacks. After finding 3 critical vulnerabilities that could have compromised millions of customer records, the pressure to be perfect became unbearable. When I collapsed during a meeting with the board, my doctor delivered an ultimatum: change my environment or prepare for worse health consequences. So I made the switch to marketing at DataVault Systems, a mid-sized company providing secure customer management solutions to businesses. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone from protecting financial data to selling the promise of data protection. But the pace was manageable, the work interesting enough, and my blood pressure returned to normal ranges. Until I noticed something while preparing marketing materials for our newest customer portal update. I'd been recording screen captures for a promotional video, showing how easily customers could access their information. During one of the playbacks, I noticed a brief flicker during the verification process, the kind of flicker that sends chills down a security expert's spine. That night, I stayed late, using basic tools to analyze what was happening in that split-second window. What I found made my heart sink. During the verification handshake, our system was momentarily transmitting customer data without encryption. Names, addresses, account details, everything needed for identity theft. I prepared my findings carefully, creating clear documentation before approaching Dimitri's team. Their response still burned in my memory. After that humiliating dismissal, I built a simple monitoring program that would alert me to unusual traffic patterns targeting our vulnerable gateway. I didn't access company systems. That would be unethical and possibly illegal, but I could passively monitor public-facing traffic for signs someone had discovered what I had. By midnight, my phone lit up with the first alert. Someone was probing the gateway. I barely slept. By morning, the intrusion patterns had intensified. During my commute, I rehearsed how I would approach Liam, the CTO, directly. Security team be damned. But when I arrived, everything seemed normal. The security team lounged in their glass enclosure, sharing coffee and jokes. Had I misunderstood the situation? Then at 9:37 a.m., chaos erupted. Customer service stations lit up simultaneously. The call volume was unprecedented. I watched representatives gesturing frantically for managers. Words like unauthorized access and account changes floated through the open office. The data breach I'd warned about was happening in real time. I closed my office door and pulled up my monitoring program. The attack signatures were clear now. Someone had not only found the vulnerability but was actively exploiting it on a massive scale. My hands trembled as I exported the data to a secure drive. When Liam burst into my office 20 minutes later, I was ready. "They said you knew," he gasped. His normally composed demeanor shattered. "They said you warned them." "I did," I replied, turning my screen toward him. "And I've been tracking the intrusion since it began early this morning." His eyes widened. "You've been tracking?" He stopped, staring at my screen. "Is that live data?" I nodded. "The attackers are using a fairly sophisticated approach, but they're still hitting the same vulnerability I identified. Here." I pointed to a specific traffic pattern. "They're intercepting the verification handshake and capturing the unencrypted data packets." Liam dropped into the chair opposite my desk. "Why didn't security?" "Ask Dimitri," I said, keeping my voice neutral. He found my concerns amusing. Liam's expression darkened. "Show me everything." For the next hour, I walked him through my findings, explaining in plain language how the vulnerability worked and how it was being exploited. I showed him my monitoring system and how it was tracking the attack without interfering with company systems. "We need to move fast," I concluded. "Every minute means more customer data exposed." Liam stood. "I'm calling an emergency executive meeting in 30 minutes. I want you there." "What about Dimitri's team?" "Them too." His expression was grim. "Everyone needs to hear this directly from you." As he left, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in your lane, Paige." I stared at the message, a chill running through me. Something told me this situation was about to get much more complicated than a simple data breach. 30 minutes later, I sat at the far end of the conference table, watching the room fill with nervous executives. Marketing Director Natalie gave me a confused glance as she took her seat. The CEO, Andre, entered last, his normally confident stride replaced by a hurried walk. "Someone tell me what the hell is happening," he demanded, not bothering to sit. Liam stood. "We have a major security breach in progress. Customer data is being compromised through the verification system in our portal." He gestured toward me. "Paige identified the vulnerability days ago and attempted to alert the security team." All eyes turned to me. Dimitri cleared his throat. "With all due respect, she made vague statements about the portal being insecure. Nothing specific or actionable. I specifically identified the verification handshake vulnerability." I interrupted, my voice steadier than I felt. I explained exactly how customer data was being transmitted unencrypted during the authentication process. "That's not," Dimitri began. "Show them," Liam cut in, nodding toward my laptop. I connected to the projector and pulled up my analysis, walking them through the vulnerability step by step. Then I switched to my monitoring program, showing the real-time intrusion patterns. "This is happening now," I explained, pointing to the screen. "They've been harvesting data since approximately 3 a.m. Based on the traffic patterns, I estimate they've already accessed roughly 17,000 customer records." The room fell silent. "How bad is this?" Andre asked finally, directing his question to Liam. "Bad," Liam replied. "Names, addresses, account details, everything needed for identity theft. We're talking about potential lawsuits, regulatory fines, lost business, and all preventable," I added quietly. Andre's gaze snapped to me. "Explain." "I identified this vulnerability 3 days ago and reported it to the security team. I kept my eyes on Andre, not Dimitri. They dismissed my concerns, told me to stick to marketing." Andre turned to Dimitri. "Is this true?" Dimitri shifted in his chair. "We receive dozens of security concerns weekly, most unfounded. Marketing staff aren't qualified to—" "Before joining marketing," I interrupted, "I spent 6 years as a network security specialist at Atlantic Financial Trust. I was their lead vulnerability researcher for the last 3. Dimitri's face drained of color. "That wasn't in your file." "It absolutely was," Natalie interjected. That experience was why I hired her, even though she wanted a career change. Andre rubbed his temples. So you're saying our security team ignored a warning from a qualified professional, and now we have thousands of compromised customer records? That's exactly what I'm saying, I confirmed. Andre turned to Liam. Fix this, now. He looked at me. You'll work with Liam directly until this is contained. Finally, he focused on Dimitri. You and I will talk later. As the room emptied, Dimitri brushed past me. This isn't over, he whispered, low enough that only I could hear. I gathered my laptop, trying to ignore the threat, but a knot had formed in my stomach. Walking back to my office, I checked my phone again. 3 more messages from the unknown number. Everyone has secrets page. Even former security experts. How's your health these days? My hand trembled. How did they know about my health issues? I deleted the messages and tried to focus on the crisis at hand. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of technical discussions, emergency patches, and crisis management. By midnight, we had closed the vulnerability and begun the damage assessment. Early estimates suggested over 20,000 customer records had been compromised. Liam and I were the last ones in the office, reviewing the patch implementation. You did good work today, he said, leaning back in his chair. If you hadn't caught this, it would have been much worse. I finished for him. He nodded, studying me. Why did you leave security work? You're clearly talented. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. Health issues. Stress-related. The constant pressure of knowing one mistake could cost millions. And yet here you are, diving back in. Different when it's occasional, not constant, I explained. My phone buzzed with another message. Sleep well. Tomorrow will be interesting. I turned its screen down, hoping Liam hadn't noticed my expression. Something wrong? He asked. Just tired, I lied. I should head home. The parking garage was nearly empty when I reached it. As I approached my car, the hair on my neck stood up. Someone was watching me. I quickened my pace, keys clutched between my fingers. A figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Troy, I exhaled with relief. You scared me. Sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all. Long day, huh? What do you want? I asked, keeping distance between us. Just curious why you're trying to destroy Dimitri's career, he said casually. He's got a family, you know. Kids. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I reported a security vulnerability. After transferring from marketing, convenient timing. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Almost like you planned it. That's ridiculous. Is it? Atlantic Trust had a major breach right before you left. Coincidence? My blood ran cold. That's not. Just saying. People might start asking questions about your past, about why you really left. He shrugged. Might be best for everyone if you backed off. Let Dimitri handle the technical response from here. Are you threatening me? Warning you, as a colleague. He smiled again. Think about it. He walked away, leaving me shaking beside my car. The Atlantic Trust breach had happened 3 weeks after I left. I'd had nothing to do with it. But the timing could look suspicious if someone wanted to frame a narrative. I drove home on autopilot, mind racing. The unknown texts. Troy's threat. This was coordinated. Dimitri wasn't just trying to save face. He was actively working to discredit me. My apartment felt cold and exposed. I checked the locks twice, then sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. If Dimitri was digging into my past, I needed to know exactly what he might find. My employment record was clean. My security clearances at Atlantic had been impeccable. The only potential issue was my medical leave. 2 weeks of absence following my panic attack, documented as medical leave, without specifics. Could they use that somehow? My phone buzzed again. Found the Atlantic Trust incident report. Interesting reading, especially page 17. I froze. Page 17 of the incident report detailed the compromised security protocols I had helped design. The breach hadn't exploited any of my work, but someone who didn't understand the technical details might not see that distinction. They were building a case against me, suggesting I had either been incompetent at Atlantic or, worse, somehow involved in both breaches. I needed allies and evidence. Immediately. Morning came after a sleepless night. I arrived early, heading straight to Natalie's office. I need to talk to you, I said, closing her door. I think Dimitri's team is trying to shift blame by discrediting me. Her expression was grave as I explained the texts and Troy's garage confrontation. That's serious, she said when I finished. Have you told Liam? Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first. Smart. She leaned forward. Dimitri and Liam have history. They worked together at their previous company. Liam brought Dimitri on board personally. My heart sank. So Liam might not be impartial. He's fair, Natalie countered. But he's human if it comes down to your word against Dimitri's. She shrugged. We need more than suspicions. I have the text messages. From an unknown number. Hardly conclusive. She tapped her fingers on her desk. What we need is proof Dimitri knew about the vulnerability before the breach and chose to ignore it. My word isn't enough? In theory, yes. In practice, she sighed. Corporate politics are messy. Dimitri's been here 3 years. You've been here 6 months. She was right. I needed concrete evidence, something indisputable that showed Dimitri had been negligent. I should get to work, I said, standing. The response team meets in 30 minutes. Be careful, Natalie warned. Watch what you say and to whom. The response team meeting was tense. Dimitri had positioned himself at the head of the table, clearly attempting to take control of the situation. Liam sat to his right, reviewing reports. Now that we've contained the immediate threat, Dimitri began, we need to implement additional security measures and prepare our customer communication strategy. Shouldn't we discuss how this happened in the first place? I asked. Several people shifted uncomfortably. Dimitri smiled thinly. We know how it happened. There was a vulnerability in the verification process that went undetected during our regular security sweeps. Undetected? I echoed. I detected it. I reported it to your team. You mentioned general concerns, Dimitri countered smoothly. Nothing specific enough to act on. That's not, Paige, Liam interrupted, his tone cautioning. Let's focus on moving forward. Assigning blame doesn't help our customers. I bit my tongue, feeling the room turn against me. Dimitri was reshaping the narrative, and it was working. The meeting continued with Dimitri outlining response plans as if he'd been leading the effort all along. No mention was made of my contribution or the security team's dismissal of my warning. As we dispersed, Britt, the female security team member, fell into step beside me. For what it's worth, she whispered. I remember what you said that day. You were specific about the verification handshake. I glanced at her, surprised. Would you be willing to say that officially? Her expression clouded. I can't. My position. I need this job. I understand, I said, though disappointment washed through me. But, she added, even quieter, check the security team's Slack channel from Monday morning, right after you left. Someone might have had screen recording enabled during the daily stand-up meeting. She quickened her pace, leaving me standing alone in the hallway with a dangerous new possibility. If someone had recorded the stand-up meeting, there might be evidence of Dimitri discussing my warning and dismissing it. But accessing the security team's Slack would be breaking company policy at minimum, potentially illegal at worst. Yet if I didn't find proof soon, Dimitri would completely rewrite history, painting me as an attention-seeking marketing employee who got lucky with a vague warning. Or worse, he might even try to implicate me in the breach itself. As I reached my office, my phone buzzed with another message. Meeting with HR scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow. Topic: your employment status. Choose wisely, Paige. I stared at the screen, realizing the stakes had just gotten much higher. This wasn't just about professional embarrassment anymore. It was about my career, my reputation, and possibly my freedom. I locked my office door and took a deep breath. If I was facing an HR meeting tomorrow, I needed evidence today. My fingers hovered over my keyboard as I considered my options. Direct access to the security team's Slack would be traceable, and exactly what Dimitri might be hoping for. A reckless move that would support his narrative about me. I needed to be smarter than that. Opening my email, I wrote to Liam, copying Andre. In preparation for tomorrow's executive briefing, I'm compiling a timeline of events related to the breach. Could you please provide any relevant communication logs from the security team regarding customer portal vulnerabilities from last Monday morning? Professional, reasonable, and on record. If Dimitri had purged the Slack channel, my request would document that I had sought the information properly. My phone rang almost immediately. Liam, that's quite a pointed email, he said when I answered. Just being thorough, I replied. Transparency seems important right now. Dimitri says you never specifically mentioned the verification handshake vulnerability to his team. He's lying. I kept my voice calm. I described the exact issue in detail. His entire team heard it. Silence stretched between us. Then, this puts me in a difficult position, Paige. The truth shouldn't be difficult. Another pause. HR wants to meet with you tomorrow. I'm aware. I received a message about it. You, what? How? Confusion colored his voice. That meeting was just scheduled an hour ago, internal to senior management. A chill ran through me. Whoever was sending the messages had access to high-level conversations. That narrowed the possibilities considerably. I think someone's trying to intimidate me, I said carefully. I've been receiving threatening messages since yesterday. Messages? From whom? Unknown number. They know about my health issues at Atlantic Trust. They're referencing internal company discussions. That's concerning. Have you kept these messages? Yes. Forward them to me, please. His tone had shifted. And Paige, don't discuss this with anyone else yet. After sending the messages to Liam, I turned back to my more immediate problem, finding proof before tomorrow's HR meeting. A knock at my door startled me. Britt stood outside, looking nervous. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I let her in, closing the door behind her. I can't access the Slack logs, she said without preamble. Dimitri archived the channel this morning and created a new one. Convenient timing. Very. She glanced at the door. But Troy records all our stand-ups. He reviews them later to catch things he missed. It's his personal quirk. He doesn't trust his memory. Hope flickered. Would he have Monday's recording? Almost certainly. But he'd never give it to you. No, I agreed. But he might have synced it to his cloud storage. Troy isn't exactly security conscious with his personal devices. Britt's eyes widened. You're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything illegal, I interrupted. But if his personal cloud account uses the same password as his work systems, how would that help? You still can't access his accounts. I smiled faintly. One of my roles in marketing is managing our company's social media presence, including our Instagram account that Troy follows with his personal account. Understanding dawned on her face. Password reset. Standard practice when an executive forgets their social media password. Nothing unusual about marketing helping with that. She hesitated. This is risky. Less risky than losing my job and possibly facing legal action for a breach I tried to prevent. Britt nodded slowly. His password is probably Troy Rules, followed by the current year. It's what he uses for everything. Thank you. I was never here, she said, slipping out the door. Alone again, I navigated to Instagram's business portal and located Troy's personal account among our followers. The password reset process was simple, and as a business account manager, I had legitimate reason to be there. Minutes later, I had access to Troy's personal email. From there, finding his cloud storage was trivial. The password was exactly as Britt had predicted. His meeting recordings folder contained dozens of files, organized by date. I found Monday's stand-up and downloaded it, my hands trembling slightly. This was crossing a line, but they had crossed it first. The recording began with casual chatter, then shifted to project updates. 12 minutes in, Troy mentioned my visit. Marketing girl stopped by, he said, chuckling. Paige says there's a security problem with the verification handshake. Claims it's sending unencrypted customer data during authentication. Did you check it? Someone asked off camera. Dimitri's voice answered. Waste of time. She's trying to sound smart for brownie points with Natalie. Should we at least look at the authentication process? Britt's voice. If marketing is finding security issues we missed, we should all quit, Dimitri replied. Note it in the minor concerns, log and forget it. We've got actual work to do. I stopped the recording, heart pounding. There it was, proof that Dimitri had heard my specific concern and deliberately ignored it. I copied the file to my secure drive, then carefully erased my tracks in Troy's accounts. Just as I finished, a new message appeared on my phone. Nice try with the email to Liam. Dimitri already explained how you're trying to cover your tracks. HR meeting moved to 9 a.m. Bring your resignation letter. My stomach dropped. Dimitri was moving faster than I expected, trying to force me out before I could defend myself. I needed to act now. I called Natalie, keeping my voice low. Can you meet me somewhere off-site? I have something you need to see. An hour later, we sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office, Natalie watching the recording on my laptop. This is definitive, she said when it finished. But how did you get it? Better you don't know, I replied. The question is, what do we do with it? She considered for a moment. I have an idea, but you'll need to trust me and follow my lead tomorrow. What are you thinking? Andre values one thing above all else, protecting the company. If we approach this right, he'll see Dimitri as the threat, not you. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what Natalie and I had discussed. By morning, I felt oddly calm, the same focused clarity I'd experienced during critical security incidents at Atlantic Trust. When I arrived at the office, the receptionist directed me straight to the boardroom. Inside waited Andre, Liam, Dimitri, and a woman I recognized as Helen from HR. Good morning, I said, taking a seat across from Dmitri. His smile was smug, confident. Paige, Helen began, serious concerns have been raised about your conduct during this security incident. What concerns specifically? I asked. Dmitri has reported that you made misleading claims about warning the security team. Additionally, there are questions about how you knew to monitor for the specific vulnerability that was exploited. Are you suggesting I was involved in the breach? Dmitri leaned forward. The timing is suspicious. You claim security expertise, identify a vulnerability no one else found, then suddenly we have a breach exactly where you predicted. I nodded thoughtfully. That would be suspicious if I hadn't warned your team in advance, which you didn't, he countered. Not specifically. I described the verification handshake vulnerability in detail. Your entire team heard it. That's not how they remember it. The door opened, and Natalie entered, followed by the company's general counsel, Sharon. Sorry we're late, Natalie said. We had to verify some information. Andre frowned. This is a closed meeting. You'll want to hear this, Sharon said, placing a USB drive on the table. This recording might be relevant. Dimitri's confidence faltered slightly. What recording? Liam connected the drive to his laptop, and the room filled with the sounds of Monday's security stand-up meeting. As the damning exchange played, Dimitri's face drained of color. When it finished, Sharon spoke first. This appears to directly contradict your statement that Miss Woodley didn't specifically mention the vulnerability. Where did you get that? Dimitri demanded, looking at me. It was anonymously provided to legal this morning, Sharon replied before I could speak. Along with these, she slid printouts of the threatening text messages across the table. Cell tower data shows these messages were sent from this building, Sharon continued. The phone number traces to a prepaid device purchased last week. Building security footage shows Troy buying identical phones from a convenience store during his lunch break Monday. Troy, not Dimitri. The realization must have shown on my face. Dimitri didn't know, I said quietly. Did he? Troy had been trying to protect his boss by discrediting me, but he'd acted alone and clumsily. Andre turned to Dimitri. Did you instruct your team to threaten Paige? Absolutely not, Dimitri said, genuine shock in his voice. I had no idea about any messages, but you did deliberately ignore her warning about the vulnerability, Liam stated. That's clear from the recording. Dimitri's shoulders slumped. We get dozens of security concerns weekly. Most are nothing. This one cost us 20,000 compromised customer records, Andre said coldly, and potential lawsuits in the millions. I made a judgment call, Dimitri insisted, based on her role in marketing. Her role before marketing was senior vulnerability researcher at Atlantic Trust. Andre cut in, which was in her file. The room fell silent. Finally, Andre spoke again. Dimitri, you'll work with HR to transition your responsibilities. Troy will be terminated immediately. He turned to me. Paige, I owe you an apology on behalf of the company. What happens now? I asked. Now, Liam said, we need someone who understands both security and how our systems impact customers. Someone who sees vulnerabilities others miss. We're creating a new security oversight position, Andre explained, independent from the existing team, reporting directly to the executive committee. We'd like you to consider taking it. I looked at Dimitri, expecting resentment, but saw only resignation. He knew he'd failed, not because he'd missed the vulnerability, but because his arrogance had prevented him from listening. I'll consider it, I said, on one condition. The security team needs restructuring, not just new leadership. Technical expertise matters, but so does creating an environment where concerns are heard regardless of who raises them. Andre nodded. I think recent events have made that abundantly clear. 3 months later, I sat in my new office, reviewing security protocols with my team, a diverse group including former marketing, customer service, and development staff alongside security specialists. Britt had been promoted to technical lead after declining to follow Dimitri to his new role at a smaller company. The customer data breach had been expensive but survivable. My new security oversight program had already identified and closed 7 additional vulnerabilities. My phone buzzed with a message, not threatening this time, but from Liam. Board loved your presentation. New security budget approved. I smiled. The most satisfying revenge wasn't destroying Dimitri's career or publicly humiliating him. It was building something better from the ruins of his failure, a security system that valued diverse perspectives and actually protected our customers. After all, true security isn't about who's smartest in the room. It's about creating a culture where everyone's insights matter, especially those coming from unexpected places. If you found this story valuable, Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about workplace justice and standing up for what's right even when no one believes in you. Have you ever had your expertise dismissed because of your role or department? Share your experiences in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is simply proving your worth through results. Eldon's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smile as he leaned back in his chair. The morning sun streaming through his office window cast long shadows across the polished oak desk between us, the desk worth more than my monthly salary. "You're demoted for not respecting company family," he said coldly, tapping his fingers against the genetic reports I'd submitted last week. Reports showing his son had cost us $4 million in errors I refused to cover up. "Porter is the future of this operation, and you've undermined him at every turn." My throat tightened. 8 years of building the most respected equine genetic testing program in the industry, reduced to this moment. Outside the window, thoroughbreds worth millions grazed on Kentucky bluegrass, unaware their bloodlines were being corrupted by nepotism and pride. "Effective when?" I asked softly, surprised by the steadiness in my voice despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Eldon smiled, thinking he'd won. "After the quarterly shareholder meeting, 3 days, and my replacement, Porter, will oversee the genetic testing division, with support staff to handle the technical aspects." Porter, who couldn't tell a genetic marker from a magic marker. The same Porter who had ignored my explicit warnings about inbreeding coefficients, approving matches between related bloodlines, despite glaring recessive disease markers. "The testing program requires specialized expertise," I said carefully. The shareholders expect results, Leora." Eldon cut me off, rising from his chair. "And frankly, your obsession with genetic purity is holding us back from producing winners. Porter understands what buyers want: speed, not your theoretical health concerns." Theoretical. 7 foals born with devastating genetic conditions this season alone. 4 dead already, the others suffering. $4 million in championship potential, destroyed. And families who had purchased our breeding rights demanding explanations I refused to falsify. "You'll transition your files to Porter tomorrow," Eldon continued, "and prepare a statement accepting responsibility for the testing irregularities. We'll position your demotion as a mutual career shift during the shareholder meeting. And if I refuse?" His smile vanished. "Your contract includes confidentiality clauses. Break them, and you'll never work with horses again." I stood up slowly, gathering my dignity like armor. "I understand perfectly." Walking through the marble-floored atrium of Winston Farms, I felt eyes following me. Everyone knew. Administrative assistants suddenly needed to check their phones. Trainers who normally stopped me with questions about bloodlines suddenly remembered urgent tasks elsewhere. In my laboratory, I closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing the trembling to take over my body. Tears burned, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not here. Not when there was work to do. My computer screen showed the database I'd built over 8 years. Every horse, every genetic marker, every breeding recommendation, and every override Porter had initiated against my advice. The database didn't lie. It couldn't be intimidated or demoted. 3 days until the shareholder meeting. 3 days to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. Hey, before we continue this story, I just wanted to thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this corporate drama so far, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep creating content you'll love. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Leora Webb, and I never planned to become a whistleblower. Growing up on a modest horse farm in Virginia, I'd fallen in love with equine genetics during college, fascinated by how DNA influenced everything from a horse's speed to its susceptibility to disease. When Winston Farms offered me the position of head veterinary geneticist 8 years ago, it seemed like a dream. The operation was legendary. 6 Kentucky Derby winners in 2 decades, breeding stock that commanded 7-figure stud fees, and a reputation for excellence that attracted royal families and racing enthusiasts from around the world. Eldon Winston had built an empire on horseflesh and blue ribbons. When I joined, he respected my expertise. "Science gives us an edge," he'd told me then. "Your work ensures our buyers get what they pay for, genetic excellence." For 5 years, it worked beautifully. Our testing program became the industry standard. I identified recessive health issues, before they spread through bloodlines. We culled problem traits while enhancing speed, endurance, and temperament. Buyers paid premium prices because they trusted our genetic guarantees. Then Porter arrived, fresh from dropping out of veterinary school. Too much memorization, not enough practical work, he'd explained. Porter was 32, charming with buyers, and completely unqualified for any position involving scientific judgment. Yet Eldon installed him as director of breeding selection, a position that should have required years of specialized training. Learn from Leora, Eldon instructed his son. Her technical knowledge combined with your instinct for winners will take us to the next level. I tried. For 18 months, I attempted to teach Porter the basics of genetic science. He nodded, smiled, took notes he never reviewed. Meanwhile, he made breeding decisions based on gut feeling and what would tell a good story to buyers. When I objected with scientific evidence, he'd pat my shoulder. Numbers don't win races, Leora. Heart does. Heart doesn't prevent genetic disorders. The real trouble began 6 months ago. Porter became fixated on a stallion named Midnight Commander. Beautiful, fast, championship bloodlines, but carrying a recessive gene for degenerative joint disease. My testing flagged him for limited breeding only, and never with mares from certain bloodlines that might also carry the recessive marker. Porter overruled me. His speed genetics are too valuable to restrict, he'd argued in front of Eldon. Besides, what are the odds that we'd match him with a mare carrying the same recessive trait? The odds were 28% with the breeding plan he proposed. I showed them the data. Porter called me paranoid. Eldon sided with his son. 7 foals were born this season from those prohibited matches. 3 with severe joint deformities were euthanized weeks after birth. 1 died during delivery. 3 more showed early symptoms of conditions that would eventually cripple them. Buyers who had invested millions in our breeding program wanted answers. Tell them it was an unforeseeable genetic mutation, Porter had instructed me. Natural variation, nothing to do with our breeding selections. I refused. The genetic testing clearly showed the connection. The records proved I had warned against exactly these outcomes. Yesterday, I received a message from our largest buyer, an Emirates sheikh, who had purchased breeding rights to 2 affected foals. My veterinarians found concerning genetic patterns. Please explain immediately. I sent him the truth. The complete genetic profiles showing the inbreeding coefficient was above safe thresholds, explaining that these matches had proceeded against my documented recommendations. 2 hours later, Eldon called me to his office. Now, sitting in my lab with my career in tatters, I faced an impossible choice: accept blame for others' mistakes and preserve my professional future, or risk everything to protect the horses and the truth. My phone chimed with a message from Eldon. Need your statement accepting responsibility by morning. Keep it professional. I closed my eyes, remembering the foals born with twisted limbs, remembering the trust buyers placed in our genetic guarantees, remembering the oath I'd taken as a veterinary scientist to prevent animal suffering. Opening my eyes, I began not the statement Eldon wanted, but a comprehensive analysis of our entire breeding program, every inappropriate match, every override of scientific advice, every projected outcome if we continued down this path. By morning, I had created something else entirely, a presentation that would either save Winston Farms from itself or burn my career to the ground. The choice was clear now. Sometimes, the only way forward is through fire. As dawn broke over the horse pastures, I made one final decision. Eldon had given me 3 days until the shareholder meeting, 3 days that he thought would be my professional funeral preparation. He had no idea they would become his instead. The morning of the shareholder meeting arrived with a heavy mist hanging over Winston Farms. From my cottage on the property, I could see the main complex where portraits of champion thoroughbreds lined hallways that smelled of leather, money, and tradition. I dressed with deliberate care, charcoal gray suit, crisp white blouse, hair pulled back in a severe knot, professional, unassailable. The thumb drive in my pocket contained 8 years of data that would either save this place or burn it down. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira, my lab assistant, who'd been with me since day one. Are you sure about this? He'll destroy you. I texted back, some things matter more than careers. The shareholders' meeting would be held in the trophy room, where glass cases displayed silver cups and gold-embossed awards from decades of racing triumphs. As I approached, I saw sleek cars parked outside, German engineering, Italian design, American Muscle. The power players had arrived. Inside, 23 people mingled over coffee and pastries. Old money in tailored suits, new money in designer casual, all with one thing in common. Millions invested in horses they believed represented genetic perfection. Eldon stood near the head of the table, Porter at his side. Porter wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, but he'd already loosened his tie. His easy smile faltered when he saw me. Eldon's eyes narrowed. "You're early. I'm still head geneticist until this meeting concludes," I replied, setting my leather portfolio on the table. "Where would you like me to sit?" He gestured to a chair near the back. "The genetic summary has been removed from today's agenda. We'll address the breeding program transition instead." I nodded and took my assigned seat, not bothering to correct his assumption. The room filled quickly with shareholders greeting each other with backslaps and air kisses, wealthy investors who treated Winston Farms as both passion and profit center. At precisely 9, Byron Merritt, chairman of the board, called the meeting to order. At 72, Byron had the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades at racetracks, but his eyes missed nothing. He'd been skeptical of Porter's promotion from the start. "Before we begin," Byron said, "I'd like to acknowledge our international shareholders joining us today. Sheikh Hamad, wonderful to have you with us again." The sheikh nodded, his expression unreadable. He'd purchased breeding rights to 2 of the compromised foal lines. Eldon smoothly took control. "Our agenda today focuses on our strategic vision. Porter has prepared an exciting expansion proposal. But first, I have a personnel announcement." Here it came. I clasped my hands tightly in my lap. After 8 years of service, Leora Webb will be transitioning from her role as head of genetic testing to a supporting laboratory position. This shift will allow Porter to implement his innovative breeding strategy with a more streamlined approval process. Several shareholders exchanged glances. One, an Austrian countess who bred dressage champions, raised her hand. "May I ask why?" "Dr. Webb's genetic program is why many of us invested here." Eldon's smile never wavered. "While we value Leora's contributions, we've identified inefficiencies in the testing protocols that have led to some communication issues." "Communication issues?" The question came from Sheikh Hamad, his voice quiet but clear. "Is that what you call the genetic disease that killed my foal last month?" The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Eldon cleared his throat. "We're investigating isolated incidents that— 7 incidents this season," I said, my voice cutting through his. $4 million in losses. Not isolated and not unpredictable. Every head turned toward me. Eldon's face darkened. "This isn't the appropriate time, Leora." "Actually," Byron interjected, "as shareholders investing in a breeding program built on genetic excellence, I believe this is precisely the appropriate time." He turned to me. "Dr. Webb, would you care to elaborate?" I stood, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. The genetic testing program flagged dangerous breeding combinations that were subsequently approved against scientific recommendation. The affected foals suffered preventable conditions directly linked to inbreeding coefficients that exceeded safe thresholds. "That's not possible," Porter said, his casual confidence slipping. "I personally reviewed all breeding selections." "Yes, you did," I agreed. After overriding the genetic safety protocols I established, I removed a stack of bound reports from my portfolio and began passing them around the table. This analysis details every breeding pair approved in the last 18 months, the genetic markers that raised concerns, the documented warnings my team provided, and the resulting health outcomes. The sheikh flipped through the pages, his expression darkening. "This shows you explicitly warned against breeding Northern Storm with any mare from the Midnight Commander line due to recessive traits." "Yes, that recommendation was overruled." "By whom?" the Countess asked. Porter leaned forward. "The genetic testing is just one factor in breeding decisions. My father and I considered market demands, speed traits." "Page 38, I interrupted. The inbreeding coefficient chart shows how closely related these bloodlines had become under the current breeding program. The industry standard is below 12.5%. Winston Farms has been averaging 18.7% this season, with some pairs as high as 25%. A murmur ran through the room. These people might not be scientists, but they understood numbers, especially when those numbers affected their investments. "This is absurd," Eldon snapped. "Porter has introduced innovations that will revolutionize our breeding program." "Like what?" asked an elderly man who owned racing stables in Kentucky. Porter straightened his shoulders. We're prioritizing speed genetics over conservative health markers. Every breakthrough requires bold thinking. Bold thinking produced Windmaker, I countered, referring to last season's most promising colt, a horse born with navicular disease that was concealed from buyers until after purchase. The room erupted. Windmaker had sold for $2.3 million to a consortium represented at this very table. That's slander, Eldon hissed. It's documented, I replied, pointing to the report. Page 42 shows the pre-sale testing that identified early markers for the condition, alongside the altered report provided to buyers. Byron's face had gone grim. Eldon, is this accurate? Absolutely not. Eldon's voice boomed with practiced authority. These are complex scientific issues being deliberately misconstrued. Porter and I have built a vision for Winston Farms that transcends the limited perspective of laboratory technicians. Laboratory technicians. The Austrian countess's eyebrows shot up. Dr. Webb has 3 advanced degrees in equine genetics. Her research on recessive trait identification changed the industry. And her excessive caution is handicapping our breeding program, Porter countered. Every superior bloodline carries some genetic risk. Our competitors understand this balance. That's why they're outpacing us in producing winners. Winners with shortened careers and painful conditions, I said quietly. Is that the legacy you want for Winston Farms? The tension in the room was palpable. I could see shareholders mentally calculating the financial implications, not just the immediate losses, but the potential lawsuits, the reputation damage, the future devaluation of their investments. Byron cleared his throat. I believe we need to address these concerns before proceeding with any transition or expansion plans. He turned to me. Dr. Webb, what would you recommend? I felt Eldon's glare burning into me, but kept my eyes on Byron. A complete review of all breeding selections for the upcoming season, transparent genetic profiles provided to all shareholders and buyers, and immediate notification to anyone who purchased potentially compromised bloodlines. That would tank our reputation, Porter protested. Your breeding decisions already did that, shot back the sheikh. I've invested over $30 million in your bloodlines based on genetic guarantees you've apparently violated. Eldon rose, commanding the room through sheer force of personality. This is becoming unnecessarily adversarial. Dr. Webb has presented her perspective, but I assure you, the reality is more nuanced. Perhaps we should adjourn to review these claims privately before making hasty judgments. It was a skilled move. Break the momentum, separate the shareholders, work them individually. I'd seen him do it before when faced with opposition. Not this time. Before we adjourn, I said, there's something else the shareholders should see. Eldon's eyes flashed, warning. We've heard enough, Leora. Actually, Byron said, as chairman, I determine when we've heard enough. Please continue, Dr. Webb. I reached into my portfolio and removed a second report, thinner than the first. This projects the genetic outcomes of the next 3 breeding seasons under Porter's approved plan. As I distributed copies, the room fell silent. The data was devastating. Projected disease rates climbing to 40% within 3 years. Catastrophic joint issues appearing in multiple bloodlines. Fertility problems becoming endemic. A tech investor from California was the first to speak. This shows we'd be selling genetically compromised horses while continuing to market them as premium stock. That's not just bad business, it's potentially fraudulent. Precisely why Dr. Webb is being removed, Eldon said smoothly. Her doom and gloom projections are designed to undermine modernization efforts. These aren't projections, I corrected. They're mathematical certainties based on genetic inheritance patterns. The science is unambiguous. The room had divided now, some shareholders leaning toward Eldon, others clearly alarmed by my findings. Byron studied both reports, his expression grave. I propose, he said finally, that we table the leadership transition and expansion plans pending a full genetic audit by an independent third party. Unnecessary, Eldon said. We can handle this internally. That approach has evidently failed, the Countess replied. I second Byron's proposal. All in favor? Byron asked. Hands rose around the table. Not all, but enough. A clear majority. Eldon's face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Very well. We'll cooperate with an external review, which I'm confident will vindicate our breeding program. And in the meantime, the sheikh added, All breeding decisions will require scientific approval, not just Winston family approval. Another vote, another defeat for Eldon. As the meeting shifted to other business, Porter leaned over to whisper something to his father. Eldon nodded, then glanced at me with cold calculation. The message was clear. This isn't over. I knew that. In fact, it was just beginning. During the lunch break, I stepped onto the veranda overlooking pastures where million-dollar thoroughbreds grazed. The mist had cleared, revealing a perfect Kentucky day. Behind me, I heard footsteps approach. "You've started a war you can't win," Porter said, stopping beside me. His voice was casual, almost friendly. "Dad built this place through connections you can't imagine. One board meeting won't change that." I turned to face him. "This isn't about winning, Porter. It's about those horses." I nodded toward the fields, "and the people who trust us to breed them ethically." He laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Ethics don't win races. Results do. Dead foals aren't results." His smile vanished. "You think you're untouchable because of your fancy degrees, but you're about to learn how this industry really works." Before I could respond, his father appeared in the doorway. "Porter, a word." As he walked away, Porter whispered, "Watch your back, Leora. Dad doesn't forgive people who cross him." I watched them huddled in intense conversation, occasionally glancing my way. Whatever they were planning, I needed to be ready. What I didn't realize was how quickly and how ruthlessly they would move against me, or that their retaliation would give me the perfect opportunity to implement the final phase of my plan. I returned to my lab that afternoon to find the door locked. Access code changed. A security guard stood outside, avoiding eye contact. "Orders from Mr. Winston," he mumbled. "No entry pending investigation." Investigation of what? "Data security concerns. Mr. Winston says you accessed confidential files without authorization." Of course, classic Eldon. When threatened, counterattack. Frame me as the wrongdoer to undermine my credibility with the shareholders. "The genetic database is literally my job," I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage building inside me. He shrugged uncomfortably. "Just following orders, ma'am." I walked away, pulse pounding in my temples. My entire professional life was in that lab. Research, personal notes, testing protocols I'd developed over years. Eldon knew exactly what he was doing, cutting me off from my evidence. Back in my cottage, I found Mira waiting on the porch, face tight with worry. "They're saying you stole proprietary data," she said, following me inside. "Eldon called an emergency staff meeting, said you manipulated test results to make Porter look bad." I poured us both water, hand trembling slightly. "And you? What do you think?" "I think 8 years of watching you triple-check every result tells me all I need to know." She hesitated. "There's more. They've already packed your lab equipment for inspection. And Porter's telling everyone you falsified the inbreeding coefficients." Perfect. They were moving even faster than I'd anticipated. "Have they checked the backup servers yet?" I asked casually. Mira's eyes widened slightly. "What backup servers?" I allowed myself a small smile. "Exactly." That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Midnight, East Barn. Come alone if you want to save your career. P. Porter," offering what he thought was leverage. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. Whatever game they were playing, I needed to understand the moves. The East Barn housed our most valuable breeding stallions. Walking there under moonlight, past security cameras I knew monitored every approach, I felt strangely calm. Beyond the paddocks, lights from the main house revealed silhouettes moving inside. Eldon working late, planning his next attack. Porter waited in the shadows by the barn entrance, a manila envelope clutched in his hands. He'd been drinking. I could smell whiskey from 6 feet away. "Smart of you to come," he said, words slightly slurred. "Dad wanted to just fire you tomorrow, but I convinced him to offer an alternative." "How generous." He thrust the envelope toward me. "Resignation letter. Sign it. Say you're leaving for personal reasons. Dad will give you a neutral reference and 6 months severance." I didn't touch the envelope. "And if I refuse?" "Then we release evidence showing you altered genetic markers in the database." His smile was ugly now. "Nobody will believe anything you said at that meeting once we prove you manipulated data." "That's quite an accusation." He stepped closer, alcohol giving him false courage. "We both know this industry runs on reputation. One whiff of scientific misconduct, and you'll never work with horses again. Is that why you called me here? To threaten me with fabricated claims? To give you a chance, Leora." He sounded almost sincere. You're brilliant, truly, but you don't understand how this business works. We sell dreams, not just horses. Nobody paying millions wants to hear about genetic risks. They deserve the truth. They deserve what they pay for. Winners. He tapped the envelope. Sign by morning or we release everything. Your call. After he left, I stood alone in the night air, listening to the soft nickering of horses worth more than most people's lifetimes. I opened the envelope. The resignation letter was dated 3 weeks ago, before the foals died, before my confrontation with Eldon. They'd planned this narrative perfectly. I'd resigned before making false accusations against the Winstons out of personal vindictiveness. Morning brought rain and chaos. My access card deactivated, email offline, phone buzzing with concerned messages from industry colleagues who'd heard rumors that I was under investigation for data manipulation. By noon, security arrived to escort me off the property. 3 hours to pack, 8 years of my life. As I loaded my car, Byron Merritt's sleek Bentley pulled up. The chairman stepped out, umbrella in hand. "This seems precipitous," he said, watching the security guard hovering nearby. "Eldon claims he's found evidence you altered testing data." "Convenient timing," I replied. "Very." Byron studied me carefully. "The external auditors arrive tomorrow. Eldon insists they use his son's revised protocols rather than yours." "Of course he does. Dr. Webb." Byron lowered his voice. "Many shareholders were impressed by your presentation. If there's anything else we should know before this audit begins." I closed my trunk carefully. "The genetic science speaks for itself, Mr. Merritt. Just make sure the auditors see the original database, not whatever version Eldon provides them." He nodded thoughtfully. "Good luck, doctor. I suspect we'll speak again soon." 3 days of limbo followed. I rented a small apartment in Lexington, fielded concerned calls from colleagues, and waited. Industry forums buzzed with speculation about my departure and rumors of issues with Winston Farms' prestigious breeding program. On day 4, my phone rang, Sheikh Hamad's assistant, requesting an urgent meeting. The next morning, I found myself in a private dining room at Lexington's most exclusive hotel, facing not just the Sheikh, but 5 other major Winston Farms investors. "We've been denied access to the genetic database," the Sheikh explained without preamble. "The external auditors report difficulties accessing original testing data. Eldon claims older records were corrupted in a server migration," added the Countess from Austria. "Convenient, no?" I kept my expression neutral. "Very." "Dr. Webb," the Sheikh continued, "we have a proposition. Our consortium represents 62% of Winston Farms' external investment. We're prepared to demand complete transparency, including your reinstatement. But first, we need certainty that your claims are verifiable. And if Eldon has already altered the data," the Kentucky stable owner smiled thinly, "that would constitute fraud against shareholders. A serious legal matter." The Kentucky stable owner. A serious legal matter. I considered them carefully. "What exactly are you asking?" "1. Evidence," the Countess said simply. "If what you presented at the meeting is accurate, prove it independently of whatever Eldon might have tampered with." I allowed myself the smallest smile. "As it happens, I can do exactly that." 2 weeks later, the Winston Farms Board of Directors convened an emergency session. I wasn't invited, but Byron kept me updated via text. Eldon claiming vindication, Porter presenting corrected genetic analyses showing minimal risk in their breeding program, external auditors expressing frustration with data availability issues. Then my phone buzzed with Byron's final message. Showtime. At precisely 2 p.m., Sheikh Hamad requested the floor and introduced his independent genetic consultant to present findings on Winston bloodlines. The consultant was Dr. Miles Chen, director of the Equine Genetics Institute and my former doctoral advisor. His presentation was devastating. Comprehensive genetic analyses of 128 Winston horses, showing exactly the problems I'd identified. Blood samples taken directly from the horses by veterinarians representing the investor consortium, analyzed by 3 separate laboratories. Irrefutable evidence. As Eldon and Porter tried to challenge the findings, Sheikh Hamad delivered the coup de grace. He played the audio recording I'd made of Porter's midnight barn threat, his admission that they knowingly sold compromised horses, his attempt to coerce me into silence. By 6 p.m., the board had voted to remove both Winstons from operational control, pending a full investigation. By 8 p.m., My phone rang with an offer to return as Chief Genetic Officer, with expanded authority and double my previous salary. But the real satisfaction came 3 days later, when I walked into my restored lab to find Mira grinning beside a familiar computer. "Remember how you always insisted on triple redundant backups for the genetic database?" she asked, "including the off-site server that only you and I knew about?" I smiled. The backup that automatically archived every entry, every change, every override, with user identification and timestamps. "The same," she confirmed. "The database Eldon and Porter didn't know existed when they tried erasing their tracks." She handed me a flash drive, every alteration they made to the records. "After locking you out, timestamps match exactly when they were trying to frame you." Perfect. The legal consequences unfolded gradually. The board's investigation uncovered years of deception. Lawsuits from buyers of compromised bloodlines mounted. The financial penalties would be staggering. 1 month after my return, I found Porter waiting beside my car after work. He'd lost weight, his designer clothes replaced by jeans and a rumpled shirt. "You won," he said simply. "Dad's reputation is destroyed. Our family's legacy is in ruins." This wasn't about winning, Porter. Then what was it about? Revenge? I thought about the foals who had died suffering, the buyers who had been defrauded, the genetic lines permanently damaged by arrogance and greed. "Justice," I answered, "for the horses that couldn't speak for themselves." He looked away. "The DA's office contacted me today. They're considering criminal charges for securities fraud." "I'm not surprised. I could go to prison, Leora." His voice cracked. "Help me. Tell them I was just following my father's instructions. Like you helped me when your father threatened my career? When you tried to frame me for your mistakes?" I shook my head. "You made your choices, Porter. Now face them with whatever dignity you can muster." As he walked away, shoulders slumped, I felt no triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing the truth had finally prevailed. 6 months later, Winston Farms operates under new management. Our breeding program adheres to the strictest genetic standards in the industry. The horses in our fields will produce generations of champions without hidden suffering. Eldon accepted a plea deal. Massive fines, industry banishment. Porter cooperated with prosecutors and received probation. They've both disappeared from the racing world. As for me, I still walk the paddocks at dawn, watching foals with strong limbs gallop across Kentucky bluegrass. Their genetic profiles, transparent, ethical, honest, have made Winston Farms more successful than ever. My revenge wasn't destroying the Winstons. It was building something better from the ruins of their deception. A legacy of integrity that will outlast us all. Thank you so much for staying with this story until the end. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate justice, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Drop a comment letting me know what you thought about Leora's revenge. Was it satisfying, or would you have handled things differently? Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who might enjoy them. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about building something better.